Welcome, today I'll be discussing the use of globals in my game engine, how I did it and what are the benefits. Let's actually start discussing the API for callbacks. So in game state there are callbacks, for example update, which gets called on every frame, and what I did before is I was passing some context. It contains some frame information like delta time or inputs or telemetry or like the window info, like what's the size of the window and the handle to the window. And so I only had the access to this information from the game state, from the central callback. There are also game objects and they also have update callbacks. And they call update on components, on their components. And so if I really wanted for this system to be useful, I would need to pass the context explicitly everywhere to all the game objects and to all the components. And as I started implementing that, I realized that it becomes untestable, like I would have to mock the context everywhere. And remember that I said context contains the handle to the window. There is no window in tests. So that's a problem I didn't want to deal with. I realized that it would probably get messier as the number of things I want in my callbacks grows. So I decided to actually remove explicit passing and use global variables instead. And so here they are defined in the globals module. The variables themselves are only accessible inside of the game engine, and I have a private and public API to them. So I use static variables, and in Rust they have to be thread safe. That's why I'm using onceLock and RWLock. But this requires locking and the ergonomics must be bad, right? No, I have public API that eliminates this problem. Basically, it just panics when something is not accessed correctly. There are public functions that return immutable references, and there are private functions that allow the engine to mutate global variables. So there's this helper macro that I use inside of this module, where it acquires onceLock and panics if it was not initialized, and then it either tries to read or write the RWLock and panics if that's not possible. And so because the edge cases are handled with panics with good messages, it's quite nice to use. Let's see the input, for example. So here's where I handle keyboard inputs, and for each event I access the input global as mutable and do whatever I need to the input value inside of it. And as for using these global variables, for example, this is the update callback in my Snake game, and here is how I access the globals. I just call the public API, and then I just use the input as if it were a normal reference. Because the RWLock guards implement deref traits. Here I return the impl of deref, just normal deref for public API and mutable deref for private API. And not everything needs all the context all the time. For example, I only access the telemetry global once a second when I need to print the telemetry. And that's how I use globals in my game engine. It feels a lot nicer than passing everything everywhere explicitly all the time. So yeah, bye.